Good evening, friends. And once again, I welcome Mr. Suresh Lulla, who does not need any introduction. In fact, it is a pleasure and honor for us to have someone who has worked so closely with the giant quality guru, Mr. Juran, opened the Juran Institute of Quality way back in 1987 in this country. And therefore, I think he is like a legend. And any institution can be proud to be associated with him and to have him speak on any aspect of quality, because he is like a fish in the water as when it comes to the issues of quality. And he is now throwing light on how to bring health to the bottom line in the hospitals, and therefore especially to focus on the cost of poor quality. How do we handle the cost of poor quality? So over to you, Mr. Suresh Lulla.
Thank you, Dr. Agarwal. You, in your own capacity, are a missionary for quality improvement or continual quality improvement. It's very admirable the kind of efforts you're putting in to bring it into the DNA of Indians. I'd like to start with how are we organized in a hospital? We're organized in silos. These silos have names. Could be from purchase to X-ray department to OT to marketing to accounting. And our purpose is to bring profit for the hospital through these silos. Thought number 2, who defines quality? Customer. Where is the customer in this silo-like infrastructure? The customer is somewhere outside, and the customer receives output of work that flows cross-functionally to the customer. So this is what we call quality management, the flow of work on processes that run across an organization. Excellence would mean integrating quality management with financial management. The problem with the current structure is that quality is seen as a delegable subject to the operations, when in reality, quality should enjoy as much status as finance in the boardroom. Why? Because we are delivering to the customer. Try living one day without a customer. It's very difficult. Now, in order to communicate with the finance, we need to speak their language, which is money. And the title of this webinar is How to Bring Health to the Bottom line of the report card of the organization, profit and loss. So how do we bring health to the bottom line? By reducing cost of poor quality. What is quality? Quality, according to Dr. Juran, and I support the view, is fitness for use. It's not just the customer, it's the user of the service. The customer could be the family that's admitting a child. The user of the service is the child. Quality happens when the user is delighted. There are two aspects to fitness for use. The first is, what are the features of the hospital? If they have the right features, it's a good quality hospital in my mind. And it meets my expectations. So I come to the hospital. This is what brings me to the hospital, the customer to the hospital. The second part is that once I'm in, I don't need any surprises. I would like to be delighted beyond my expectations. So all the work that goes on should be free from deficiencies. Doing the right things that the customer wants in the right manner. Doing the right things right. What are the product and service features that one would associate with a hospital? For example, I want a private hospital room. Or I'd like my billing itemized. This could be the insurance company. Insurance company is also a customer. I'd like a short stay surgery. When you have the right features and I come to you, you have met my needs. You met my needs by proactively understanding what my requirements are. My experience increases. I'm satisfied, I'm delighted. And the hospital will benefit through more and more similar customers coming there, higher income. As a consequence, you have to also be prepared that higher quality costs more for product and service features. Each feature has a cost. So higher quality increases your costs. Let's look at the other side, deficiencies. Deficiencies not just in the clinical processes, but in the non-clinical. In fact, if you look at a hospital, it has so many processes that are similar to a hotel. Delay in admission. Overcharged for supplies received. The surgery starts late. The meals delivered were cold. Are these deficiencies you recognize? Unplanned return to surgery. Things didn't happen correctly, I had to come back. All these deficiencies create wasteful work. Freedom from deficiencies. Meet customer needs without deficiencies. I came to you. Now don't give me surprises. Customer experiences dissatisfaction, or when it's freedom from deficiencies, reduced satisfaction. Hospital benefits through lower costs. and higher quality is less expensive. Higher quality costs less. For products and features, higher quality costs more. For freedom from deficiencies, higher quality costs less. So fitness for use has two avatars. One is in terms of the features that attracted me to you, and freedom from deficiencies, the experience of being in the hospital left me delighted. Let's look at an iceberg. In these days, we do talk about climate and environment, so I thought an iceberg would be a good example to start with. The iceberg is nature's most spectacular creation. We only see the tip of the iceberg, which is about 20% of the real iceberg. The balance 80% is hidden below the surface of the ocean. This 80% has the potential to sink the Titanic. The iceberg of cost of poor quality, you see only the visible parts, which are rejects, waste, customer complaints, testing, rework. These are the typical things that we see. What we don't see is below the surface, hidden. 15 to 25% of total costs are hidden. These hidden costs are a variety. Take, for example, excess inventory. We see inventory all over the place. Why? Because our processes are incapable. Complaint handling. Why do we have a complaint? Because the customer was unhappy and we have to rework or redo something. Excessive employee turnover. What happens? While you don't have an employee, a substitute takes over, or someone from another department doubles up. Now both the jobs suffer, and so on. COPQ. What is COPQ about? It's about the chronic, I underline the word chronic, waste in the organization. The waste we have learned to accept. Literally, the garbage at the canteen. Garbage in the housing colonies. We've learned to accept. That is chronic waste. This chronic waste creates chronic problems. There are sporadic problems that can be done through quality control and firefighting, where you put the symptom of the problem out, put the fire out. But a chronic problem would be where I'm a fire prevention department. I go and diagnose what caused the fire. A short circuit. Chronic problems need a different treatment to sporadic problems. COPQ, we have internal failure costs. We have external failure costs because we're looking at the total ecosystem. Appraisal costs, not all appraisal costs are COPQ, but a good percentage of them are. We do need appraisal. Prevention costs. Prevention costs are a must. We must invest in this, and this is where we don't invest. Prevention costs would be similar to doing CQI for your NABH. Prevention costs should give you a return on investment of the order of 1,000%. You can't be in any better business than in continual quality improvement, eliminating the wasteful costs. An internal failure cost would disappear if no defects are in existence prior to the delivery to the customer. So it's under our roof. When the process is running through our roof, it's an internal failure cost. It really doesn't matter whether you call it internal or external. A failure cost is a failure cost. External failure costs would disappear if there were no defects after delivery to the customer. So do you see the point? I'm referring to failure costs as being the chunk of COPQ. Appraisal costs are incurred by the hospital to discover the condition of the product service during the first time through. If I have to repeat it, that's a cost of poor quality. Prevention costs. These costs are incurred to keep failure and appraisal costs to a minimum. These costs are incurred. The two failure costs typically account for 75 to 80% of the total costs. The appraisal costs, 10 to 15. And in any organization, prevention costs are only about 5%. This 5% should go much higher, and you eliminate your failure costs. As you go about this, mapping processes, finding out where you have rework, scrap, etc., quantifying it with the help of a cost accountant. Management only believes the Brahmin of a company, which is the finance or costing departments. You need to get a basket full of problems. You need to prioritize them. And in prioritizing them, you discover that 20% of the problems account for 80% of the COPQ. These are the vital few problems that should be attended to by the vital few people in the organization, the managers. The balance can be shared across the hospital. So let me take you outside the hospital into a different environment through a quality fable. And the fable will tell you that chronic problems should not be legitimized in the budget. Don't we budget for inventory? To top it all, don't banks give us loans against inventory? Inventory is the big flag that there is something wrong in the process. Do an autopsy. See the problem with your own eyes. Improvement projects should always be approved by senior management because it's taking you away from your working hours. And are you therefore working on the right problem within the right time? If you do it right, if you do the diagnosis right, you invariably find that the root cause of the problem is a big, big surprise. Legitimizing absenteeism. A steel plant in East India had a chronic problem of absenteeism. Absenteeism of 1%. This 1% was beyond the planned absenteeism which a worker is entitled to. This was in addition to that. So what did management do? They factored this 1% into their budget. Operational plans and budget. Now instead of planned absenteeism, there's also the unplanned absenteeism budgeted for. The Quality Council at the steel plant, which employed 65,000 people, selected absenteeism as one of the big 5 pilot problems. Pilot problems should have high visibility to create a culture for quality within an organization. And if you want to carry the whole organization with you, try and see problems that no one is going to contest. Absenteeism was one such problem. You had the data and you could see an absent employee. Now, the problem with 65,000 people on campus is an elephant-sized problem. 1% for 65,000 people is a huge, huge number. So how can you eat an elephant? You break it up into smaller bites, project by project. You can eat that elephant. The bite-sized pilot project for absenteeism was ultimately localized in the smallest division on the campus, the tubes division. The tubes were into this manufacture for just 2 years. And the cost of poor quality was alarming. The works manager at the tubes division identified non-controversial heads, costs that will not be debated. Don't waste your time justifying numbers. You don't have to get very precise. And you need to be accurate, but not very precise. Even if you were 50% off, the numbers are so large that they will pull an alarm. So what did they look at? When a worker is absent, they recruit a badli. A badli is a temporary worker. This badli does not have the proficiency and the skills of the original worker. Therefore, there's a variation in the tube's length. This variation requires two steps: trimming, and there's a physical evidence of scrap that's being created. Non-controversial. All this added up to 14 lakhs per month, or 1,400,000 per month. For 12 months, that's an alarming number, and particularly, I'm talking about 3 decades back, in 1990. In pre-liberalization, 1.4 million was a huge, huge number to lose in a month. So then you get into diagnosing. Just a doctor would prescribe to a patient, go for these tests, go diagnose, and come back to me with the data. So we went as an autopsy to actually visit the absent employees. And here's an example. We knocked on the door and a Sardar opened. Why are you absent? My son is not well. Oh, is it serious? No, just a simple cough and cold. In that case, why are you absent? And here was the answer. The paperwork took 3 hours at our on-site hospital. Then I waited in another line with my son to see the doctor. That was another 1 hour. Thereafter, I waited for half an hour for the prescribed medication. By which time, sir, you had already marked me absent for the full day. Then what was the remedial action? We spent time on the admissions process and re-engineering that in 1990. Remember, computerization was in its infancy at that point. So we reduced the time from 3 hours to 30 minutes by re-engineering the process. Now remember, this was the smallest division at the steel plant. It had a multiplier impact on the entire campus, the elephant. Would you like to know how much they saved per annum in 1990? 80 crores per annum in 1980. Would that make believers of top management? Absolutely. Chronic problems should not be legitimized in the budget. There needs to be a structured problem-solving methodology. Elephant-sized problems can be broken up into bite-sized projects. When estimating COPQ, cost of poor quality, work with non-controversial factors and non-debatable numbers. It is not going to change the decision. The numbers are so large. See the problem with your own eyes. Improvement projects should always be approved by senior management. Typically, a project team would take maybe half a day per week. The project-by-project concepts of quality improvement applies to all industries, functions, and processes. Summary. The job of a manager is to solve chronic problems. Please make note of that. Chronic problems do not come with alarms. Follow a structured methodology for solving chronic problems. You can't eat an elephant in one bite, but you can eat it bite by bite. The byproduct of solving a chronic problem is COPQ reduction. We at Kimpro have saved our clients as a byproduct in excess of 25,000 crore. And this is the work they did. All we did is show them the direction. So now let's see how you would approach a hospital. You look at the financial results, and let's see, this is a very healthy hospital with revenues of 1,000 crore. To be of that scale, the investment may have been 500 crore. And a 10% profit on revenue is 100 crore. COPQ is at least 20% of revenue. What is the hospital objective? Double our profit by 2022. Option 1, double my investment, build twice as much capacity for the hospital. To double my revenue, pray to God that you have the customers and double your profit. Option 2, halve the cost of poor quality by continuous quality improvement. Just halve it, and you can do it. What are the steps? Problem definition. This is where most of the projects fail. They do not define the right problem. Problems should be specific, observable, measurable. They should impact the profit and loss account or management performance. And they should be of a size that is manageable by a project team. They should never assign blame in the problem statement. From the symptom of the problem, we do a diagnosis using quality improvement tools to come to the root cause. We need to do diagnosis with data. Problem remedy. This is actually a tricky part because we have to move to the operational department. And there could be resistance to change because not invented here solution. The trick is to engage with them and build up a solution or alternative solutions. Once they've participated in designing the solution, they will implement it. But they can't implement a solution. They won't implement a solution if it's only a diktat. And once the remedy has been running for 3 to 4 months, time to lock it into your NABH systems.
Thanks. And I think once again a charismatic presentation by one and only Suresh Lulla ji. So I think he has given this entire thing in a very, very simple, very easy to understand kind of a concept as to how can we work on tackling the cost of poor quality. Participants, if you have any questions, and in the meantime, we will need, Suresh bhai, we will need your help in actually trying to create maybe a template wherein people can start to log in the actual cost of poor quality for our hospital managers who are not really understanding it in the financial terms. So maybe we'll have to take some examples which we all know are happening in the hospitals. So whether it is delay in admission or delay in surgery, I mean, some of that, how much is it impacting a hospital in terms of finances? If we can come out with a template, we would like to kind of collaborate with you to come out with that template and a prototype example of maybe a hypothetical, even a hospital, because I am not sure how many hospitals will be ready to share their real data. But we need to do that.
I'd be delighted to work with you, Dr. Agarwal. So you make a plan and we'll work together.
Yes, we will do that. So friends, are there any questions? Please leave your feedback. You can write it on the question and answer or on chat. A poll is being circulated to you just now. Please fill that up. I think people are just speechless. That there is one question that has come. That could you explain with example cases about the bite by bite, eat of elephant example that you talked about? So he gave one example, of course, in relation to the Tata Steel plant in 1990, but some examples are from the hospital setting where you think that you may have to kind of break it down.
I will have to think about it carefully. Yeah.
But a typical example, sir, would be naturally in a large hospital, like even the same thing you may say that if a large hospital which has thousands of employees, and if you are tackling absenteeism, so rather than going into the whole hospital at one go, he has picked up one department to see as to what the problem is. Or same way you can think of any other problem, and instead of trying to think of it in totality, you may just take it from a particular department and try to come out with a solution which may impact the overall organization. Then there was a question that where you start, clinical or non-clinical?
Non-clinical. Non-clinical, undoubtedly, because you have processes from the supplier, the hospital. There's so many processes. And there's so much of benchmarking you can do across industry on that. You don't have to be restricted to a hospital. Your non-clinical processes have a commonality with so many service industries. So you can learn out of the box from other industries.
And your non-clinical processes, of course, will have an impact on the clinical outcomes and processes also, or clinical satisfaction. So it will have, and there the cost of poor quality will exponentially increase. If it comes into litigation, or you think in terms of violence that the hospitals are being subjected to, they're all cost of poor quality. And therefore, the damage to the brand of the hospital sometimes is very difficult to even put in terms of finances as to what is the cost of that damage to the brand.
Absolutely. It's absolutely.
Is there any tool to calculate cost of quality? And that's what we just discussed with Mr. Lulla, that we will think of coming out with a template where you people can do the cost of poor quality in your own organizations and share them with others. That's the only way to kind of calculate. He has given you the overall picture and architecture of how can we proceed to calculate the cost of poor quality. So again, the question is, what are the major areas in the hospital where the COPQ can be reduced, cost of poor quality can be reduced?
In the limited experience I have with hospitals in India and abroad, I've done work in Karachi with the Aga Khan University Hospital, with Bumrungrad in Bangkok, and about 12 hospitals in India. The one sure winner is admissions process and discharge process. You work on these two, it unlocks capacity. And you can see the visible benefit of it by, the reception area doesn't get cluttered, etc., and things go right. So that's one starting project that you can definitely take on. All you have to do is map that process as is. So you need the skill of process mapping or flow charting. And wherever you have a rework loop, try and do the estimation of cost of poor quality. The rework loop in your flow chart. That's one simple way I can tell you to get started. I'll give you a lot more as we go along. But map your process as is, not how you have documented it in a systems manual. What is actually happening is something different. So I'll leave it at that for the moment.
Yes, so I think somebody asked whether training and development, is it different? Well, training and I don't know in what reference, but training and development are the same, or is it different?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you properly.
I'm saying the question is that is training or development are the same or different?
Okay, a training can be a cost of poor quality. I'll explain why. Training without, education without action is easily forgotten. Education with action is remembered. If you align the training with your strategic plan and train people in time for application, you'll benefit. If you're doing numbers game of training so many people and just leaving them loose, the training will be forgotten. So keep in mind that your employees are the only asset of your organization that appreciate in value. All other assets depreciate. Now, you have to get under their skin. to keep them interested, keep developing them, and that calls for education with action. Much of this may translate into coaching one-on-one. Not one in a class, but one-on-one coaching. And leaders must be adept at coaching. So you call them mentor, whatever you call them, but a coaching skill has to be there in the leaders. So yes, you do need training, you need development, but if all you're keeping is a target of so many man hours of training per employee by this date, and that becomes the KRA for HR, then the HR person wants a full batch to accomplish his target. It's Friday, and on Monday a class is to start, but he's only got 5 registrations, and he can do it if he has 10. So what do? He calls his friends and said, "Yeah, send me a candidate, and you fill the class." Who are you training?
So
not just in case, you need just-in-time training.
Yes. So training has to have a specific goal and purpose. That's the point that Mr. Lulla is trying to explain. Amita Marla is asking, how important is it to use tools, iHealthcare? Is there a tool, Amita? I can,
could you repeat the question?
There is some tool, iHealthcare. Are you aware? I think we'll have to take it offline with her and see as to what this tool is about. She's asking about the use of this tool.
I'm not aware of it.
Yes. Can you elaborate further more on identifying the problem categories as chronic problems?
A chronic problem is a silent killer. Wherever you have inefficiencies in your cycle times for your processes, and you're justifying the delays, you've got a killer. You have to actually go and see with your eyes what's happening to define that chronic problem. A chronic problem doesn't come with an alarm. But you will figure out your chronic problems if you learn to do process mapping. As is, not what it should be. I repeat that. If you can do process mapping, you don't need a consultant. You'll know your chronic problems, you'll know how to address them, who to get involved. The problem selects the team.
So I think the other questions are also very similar, and they have been in a way answered to that. What are the common chronic problems in SEO and all that? So I think with that, we bring an end to this absolutely fantastic webinar. But this is a topic that we will have to continue to kind of work with. And I hope that you will all, Mr. Lulla will be there as a part of the pre-conference workshop at CAHO in 2020 in Kochi, where the Qualtech Awards have now been announced. And in fact, you can come out with a process excellence for one of the chronic problems that you may be having in your organization. And there you will get examples of many hospitals who would be then selected for the best kind of case studies. And Mr. Lulla will also be then explaining as to how this could have been taken to greater depth or better height. Mr. Lulla, if you want to say some words about it.
I can only say that healthcare is one of the noblest professions. And we need to be the destination for healthcare services for all global patients. I've seen the metamorphosis at Bumrungrad, and I'd love to see our hospitals doing the same.
So thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for this wonderful webinar. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, Dr. Agarwal.